'78 Sports TV here. Shout out to the LDBC. All right, I want to give my subscribers and listeners a brief update on the situation with the IBF and Julius Indongo versus Terence Crawford at 140 pounds for the Undisputed 140-pound championship of the world. Okay, now the LDBC has been talking about this for a while now. We have been campaigning for Terence Crawford versus Julius Indongo so that we, the boxing fans, the lovers of the sport of boxing, can have one champion in one division. We would love to have one champion in every division, okay? But first we have to start with one. Julius Indongo versus Terence Crawford is the closest thing to making that happen. Both fighters, both camps are willing to face each other. Both promoters, both management teams, everyone is willing to make the fight happen. The only thing that can get in the way of this is Julius Indongo has an IBF mandatory in Sergey Lipinets. Okay. Now, Lipinets has been the mandatory for 6 months. Indongo has only been the champion for about 6 months. But in that 6-month time, Julius Indongo has acquired the IBF title and the WBA title. Okay. He's taken 2 titles in less than 6 months. And he's 1 fight away with the opponent willing to face him. He's 1 fight away from having all 4 belts, or at least fighting for all 4 belts. Okay? 1 fight away with both parties willing to make the fight happen. Sounds like a dream come true for hardcore boxing fans, right? But for some reason, we keep hearing reports that the IBF does not want Indongo to face Terence Crawford yet. They want him to face his mandatory in Sergey Lipinets. Alright? Now, I've been trying to contact the IBF for several weeks now. Now, I understand that Anthony Joshua faced Klitschko. IBF title was on the line. Mr. Darrell Peoples had to be there. I understand that. I understand that Earl Spence Jr. just fought Carol Brook in the UK. IBF title on the line. Mr. Darrell Peoples had to be involved. I understand that. I understand that the IBF just had a convention where Mr. Darrell Peoples, the president of the IBF, had to attend that. You know, I understand absolutely. But usually I have no problem getting in contact with Mr. Darrell Peoples. I can make a phone call. His secretary Tracy will direct me. She'll say, hold on for a second. She'll direct me to Mr. Peoples. At the most, I might have to call back once. You know what I mean? If he's busy. Right? And I can get the answers to my questions, and then I can come and pretend like I know all the stuff about boxing. And when I heard it from the IBF president himself, right? But in this situation, strangely, I have not been able to get in contact with Mr. Darrell Peoples. I contact Mr. Peoples, and now Tracy says, hey, you know, yes, hold on for a moment. She'll put me on hold for a second, and then she'll come back to the phone and say, he's in a conference call right now. Could you call back and say an hour? I said, sure, no problem, Tracy. And then I call back and just say an hour and 10 minutes or so. She'll put me on hold and say, I'll check and see if he's available. And then she'll say, oh, well, he's on the line right now, you know. And then she'll tell me, it'll be better if you talk to our PR person, you know. It'd be better if you talk to our PR person. Well, why would I have to talk to the PR person if you don't know why I'm calling? You see? If I ask to speak to Mr. Darrell Peoples and you tell me to hold on a second, why would I need to talk to the PR person if you don't know why I'm calling? See, you're directing me to the PR person to give me a spin because you know why I'm calling. And this is what people need to understand here. This is why I'm doing this video. I held off for several days on making this video because I had hopes of actually getting in contact with Darrell Peoples. I have no desire to talk to the PR person. No disrespect to them. They have a job to do. But I talked to Mr. Darrell Peoples. I've interviewed him before. Right? I've talked to him without interviewing him before. Okay? So I don't want to talk to the PR person. Okay? The thing is this. They know why we're calling. Okay? They know why I'm calling them. Alright? They are totally aware at the outrage of the boxing fan about the Terence Crawford and Indongo situation. The last time I talked to Mr. Peoples on an interview format, he told me that the IBF, has the option. There is a board that meets. They have an option to grant the champion an exemption to not fight as mandatory. Okay, an exception if it has to be a valid reason. And this, I'm sure, is the most valid reason to be undisputed champion of the world. You understand? Mr. Darrell Peoples also said in the interview in 2013, which Blood Boxer sent to me, he said that unification bouts take precedent over mandatories. He said that himself. Okay? So my question for Mr. Darrell Peoples would have been, why? After saying that unifications take precedent over mandatories, and you yourself telling me in an interview that exceptions can be made for a champion who's trying to unify. Why is Julius Indongo being forced to face a mandatory and Sergey Lipinets, a guy who's only been waiting 6 months? Okay? In 6 month time, Indongo has won the IBF title and the WBA title. And he has an opportunity to have all 4 belts. One fight away. Both parties are willing. And you would rather him face Sergey Lipinets than fight for all 4 belts and have that power. That's very interesting to me, right? So those would be the questions I have for Mr. Darrell Peoples, but he does not seem willing. He seems very busy these days, okay? And I understand he's the president of IBF. He could be busy, okay? But I'm no fool as well. I understand why it's hard all of a sudden to get in contact with Mr. Peoples when, a couple of months ago, you can call him up, no problem, you talk to him, Now all of a sudden it's very hard to get in contact with Mr. Darrell Peoples. I'm still hoping that the IBF does the right thing in this case and allows Indongo an exception. This is too important to the state of boxing. It's too important. The thing is this. I said this when I interviewed Mr. Peoples before. I respect the IBF. I respect the IBF for standing on principle and being strict. I respect that from sanctioned body. They are the only sanctioned body currently located in the USA. Okay? They are the only sanctioned body that I know of, that I can see, that enforces the mandatory, forces the champion to face his mandatory. If Mr. Darrell Peoples says, hey, listen, 78, we're treating all our champions the same. We don't care what's on the line, what's this and that. Listen, we are trying to make sure that all of the mandatories get their title shot. I will say, Mr. Darrell Peoples, I totally understand that, and that's why I respect the IBF. However, we're talking about a guy who's been a mandatory for 6 months. We're not talking about a guy who's been a mandatory for a year and a half, 2 years. No, just 6 months. Surely this guy can afford to wait and possibly fight for all 4 belts. If Indongo goes there, holding the IBF belt and WBA belt, and beats Terence Crawford, Sergey Lipinets now has the chance to fight for all of the belts. He has the opportunity to be the best at 140 pounds and prove it with one fight. With one fight, he can prove that he's the best at 140. Why on earth would you run the risk of having Terence Crawford fight someone else in some tune-up fight, or fight one of his other mandatories, and Indongo face his mandatory, right? And then some boxing politics or some mumbo-jumbo pops up to where we can't get that undisputed matchup. That's the problem that I have. And like I said, I want to reiterate that I respect the IBF for enforcing mandatories. I do respect the IBF for that. More sanctioned bodies need to do that. But I think we have to be understanding. We have to do this in reason. You understand? We have to be practical and make sense of this. We have one fight. One fight stands in the way of total undisputed champion. One fight. And both guys are willing to make. It's not like Indongo has to sit down and negotiate with Crawford and all this stuff. No, both parties are willing to make the fight. Indongo might fight Crawford anyway and just vacate the IBF belt. And then what? You guys are willing to have Sergey Lipinets fight somebody else, Maurice Hooker or somebody for the belt? Like what is? Come on, man. You have to. The IBF has to make better sense of this and be practical, in my opinion. Now there's the argument. Some boxing fans are now making the argument that why shouldn't Lipinets should get his shot. He should get his shot. Sure, he should. I absolutely agree that Sergey Lipinets should get his title shot. But your title shot is not more important than having an undisputed champion. You're going to be in line for the IBF title regardless. Why not take a little payola under the table? I heard that the IBF doesn't accept step aside money. Fine. That would explain why a lot of champions don't want to hold the IBF title. It would explain why a guy like Floyd Mayweather avoided the IBF title like it was AIDS while he was a champion. He avoided the hell out of that title. And that's the only American title. So I understand it's two ways to look at this. I understand what the IBF is doing, and I respect them to a degree for what they're doing. I do. But they have to have some type of understanding for the boxing fan and what we want to see. Lipinets can wait. This is not some world beater, Lipinets. This is not some guy who's been beating all this top competition and everybody's been ducking him and he has all this hype and fan base around him and he's not getting his shot. No, that would make things different. If Lipinets had a roar of fans saying they can't wait to see Lipinets fight Indongo, I could understand the IBF position. I can understand Lipinets needing his title shot. You know what I mean? But he doesn't have that type of fan support. This is a guy who has less than 300 followers on Twitter or some shit. This is a regular guy who sure, I'm not trying to diminish him. He deserves a title shot because he put himself in the number one position. But it doesn't have to be before Terence Crawford unification bout. That's all I'm saying. And I think I'm making perfect sense here. And if you're a boxing fan out there and you understand what I'm saying, hey, if you're a boxing fan out there who don't understand what I'm saying, there's something wrong with you. For real. Some of you guys just like to argue. Just argue for no fucking reason. Because this is absolutely absurd. We have one fight for undisputed champion and people don't want to see it. Well, no, he should do this, he should do that. Whatever, fine. I hope that Sergey Lipinets and Julius Indongo can come to some type of understanding. I don't want to see Indongo give up his IBF belt to fight Terence Crawford and you just holding the WBA belt because it's pointless to me. Crawford has 3 belts now, but he doesn't have 4. It's pointless. You might, at this point, if the IBF is going to do this to you, you may as well go ahead and fight Sergey Lipinets and set up a fight with Terence Crawford in the future. Set up a fight and say, okay, December whatever, December 3rd, me and Terence Crawford versus Julius Indongo. Right? You got that penciled in. You got a contract done. And in the meantime, you fight Sergey Lipinets, your IBF mandatory, and you absolutely destroy him. You punish this man like he touched on your child. You punish this man like you caught him peeking at your mom in the shower. Punish Sergey Lipinets. I want Sergey Lipinets punished. I want him punished so brutally. I'm gonna leave it at that. I want him punished. Sergey Lipinets. Okay? and not because he wants his title shot, but because he's being unreasonable. That's why. He's being unreasonable. That's why I want him punished. And in the meantime, I guess Terence Crawford can fight his mandatory for the WBC, I guess, which is Emir Imam, which is another tough, dangerous fight. Yes, Emir Imam was beat up. You know, he was beat up and stopped. However, Emir Imam is still no slouch. He's no slouch. Okay, styles make fights. Terence Crawford can fight Amiri Imam for the WBC mandatory, I guess. Get that out the way. And Indongo can fight Sergey Lipinets. And we, the boxing fans, like always, will have to sit back and wait and trust that boxing will do right by us. That's what we'll have to do. You know, it is what it is. Sadly, it is what it is. I know Blood Boxing, he hate that term. It is what it is. But Brother Blood, hey man, what else can we do? It is what it is. 7 Day Sports TV. Shout out to the LDBC, and I holla.